Hey viewers, my name's Cara. I'm your host for Tuesdays here on the Pagan Perspective, and I forgot it was Tuesday until my partner just reminded me. Definitely, totally thought it was Monday. Anyway, this week we're talking about a couple things that are going on right now, and of course we've also still got pandemic going on right now, so there are a lot of events currently. There are a lot of things that people could be talking about when we say current events. This week's topic, we wanted to give people on the team the opportunity to talk about systemic oppression, anti-racism, justice, social justice, protests, if we want to, because that is a thing that is definitely going on all over the United States, which is where I live, but also is happening around the world in various places. Racism is not an issue that only exists in the United States or even on the continent of North America. It is a thing that exists all around the world, but we all deal with it differently. It happens differently in different places. So we wanted to give ourselves the opportunity to mention it so that we didn't feel like we were just totally ignoring it, to just talk about, you know, whatever pagan topic we might have had lined up otherwise, because it is important. We also wanted to still be able to recognize Pride Month, because it is also LGBTQ plus or 2S LGBTQIA plus Pride Month here in the United States, and it's also observed in other countries around the world as well. I don't know if other countries have ever had it sort of officially named as a national observance month, such as we have done here in the States sometimes, and it's become an official thing for June, official, unofficial, whatever the case may be. But other countries definitely do observe it and acknowledge it at this time as well. And especially because in the past week, a lot of us may have started seeing some news and warnings to the LGBTQ community, warning us that certain groups online were planning, starting June 1st, to post a bunch of anti-LGBT community stuff. So people were planning to post a lot of transphobic stuff, homophobic stuff, planning to be very disruptive, very triggering, very upsetting to that community as well. So I wanted us to have the opportunity to talk about both of them here. And so kind of a general way that we came up with to talk about that, or the wording that I personally came up with, was to talk about how we incorporate justice into our paths and stuff like that. So I'm going to read the topic to you now. The topic wording is as follows, and it'll be in the description as always. We have talked about racism in pagan communities in the past, as well as specific justice topics people have suggested. This week being both a time when the world is protesting systemic oppression against BIPOC, which stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color, and the first week of Pride Month in the US, what are our views on social justice and standing against oppression of all kinds? How do we incorporate justice into our paths? If we are new to these issues, how are we going about educating ourselves? And are there any resources we recommend? So we have talked about racism within paganism before on this channel. If you search, you should find some older videos that we've done about that. So I wanted to point out that the reason that we're talking about this again so soon, when we normally would leave more time in between doing essentially the same topic, is that it is current events. And I mean, honestly, racism and anti-racism are always current events because it's constantly going on, but specifically in reference to what is going on around the world right now, we are talking about it again. And I actually did a really long video for my personal channel about it this past weekend, so I didn't want to make just the exact same video over here. So instead, I'm just going to let you know a couple things. We have talked about these topics before, some related topics, some other justice-related topics, so definitely search the Pagan Perspective channel for keywords such as justice, social justice, racism, We talked about socioeconomic justice earlier this year. We've talked about eco-justice, environmental justice, things like that. Also, as far as are there any resources we recommend, there is a big document of anti-racist resources or anti-racism resources for white people that I have been referring to, that I found because a friend of mine shared it from the account of some people who created it, put it together. They curated it, in fact. And so I will link to that in the description as well. I've been going through that. There's a lot in there. There are, and I know, I'm sorry, I don't have the tripod out here right now, so the video is a little bit shaky because I'm holding it. I know that bothers some of you. I apologize. Anyway, there's a lot in this document. There are podcasts, there are children's books, there are resources for parents and teachers to talk about anti-racism with kids. There are book recommendations. There are movies and TV shows that you can stream on Netflix or Hulu. There's a whole bunch of articles. So I am slowly going through some of the articles. Some of the stuff that's available to watch is on Netflix or Hulu, some of which my partner and I have already watched. Others we are going to watch. Books that we are going to read. A couple of them, one of them that you will find on the list of resources, hello sunshine, is this book, which we had already gotten out from the library, but I hadn't gotten around to reading yet, so I'm going to start it. How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. This is a new book. This is on that list of resources. It is highly recommended. You can also follow the author on social media. And another one that we have that's not on the specific list that I'm going to link below for you, but this is another one that my partner found through our library system that we already had checked out before quarantine, so we're able to still have them at the moment. So this one is called When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives Matter Memoir by Patrice Concolors and Asha Bandele. I hope I pronounced those correctly. This one's not on the list, but it's another one that I have. White Fragility by, I think it's Robin DiAngelo, is also highly recommended. It's on that list. I know some of my friends are currently reading that, but I don't have it currently. And The New Jim Crow, it's by Michelle Alexander. My partner's already read that one. I haven't yet, but we can get it back out through the library system. So yeah, tons of books. There are, I think, links to places to donate to. You can donate directly to the GoFundMe for George Floyd's family, you can donate to bail funds. So I think there are a few things there that are listed. I can tell you that the last I saw on social media, the Minnesota Freedom Fund was very well funded, and they were actually recommending that people who want to donate to Minnesota organizations donate to Reclaim the Block and Black Visions Collective, which are both Black or BIPOC led organizations. Minnesota Freedom Fund is a white-owned organization, and they are already very funded. So they're recommending that people donate directly to those Black-owned and led organizations or directly to the family of victims. You can look up and read the stories of all of the different victims. I know that that's hard for some people. It is something that I like to do because I like to know. And also, if we're getting most of our information from mainstream media, most of their stories are usually not told. I actually had a really long discussion with my mom the other day about how, because she only watches like mainstream news, and a lot of the people around her are very racist. My mom was definitely raised with a lot of racist views, and as we all, I'm sure, have been around, because this society, the system that we are in, is racist. We are all affected by that. None of us can really say that we were not. And it may just be that we don't fully understand the ways in which we have been, and that's personal work that we can be doing as well, is exploring how much, racist conditioning we have experienced and how much of it we still have. But anyway, I had a long conversation with my mom the other day, yesterday, talking about what she had seen on the news and what she thought was going on versus what following actual Black and other POC, non-Black people of color, organizers and activists You know, people who are out there on the streets, people who are leading these protests, people who are doing anti-racism education all of the time. The stuff that my mom thought was going on was like nowhere near the truth, you know? So I had the opportunity to tell her, like, that's not the whole story. And so if you're the kind of person like me who really likes to know the whole story, it's stuff that we have to know is going on. The way that police are treating Black people and other people of color. Trans people of color are also being targeted, some by the police, some not by the police. So this is another way that Pride Month overlaps with this topic. Forgive me, my phone just cut off the video because it was getting way too hot in there and the sun was shining on the back of my phone and it was overheating. So now I'm outside my enclosed porch. It's a little cooler out here because of the wind. Another way that these topics are related is through the Stonewall riots, which were the beginning, some would say, of the gay rights movement. So the reason that we have the LGBTQ+ movement now is because of rioting. It's because of protesting against police brutality against trans and gay people of color. I do want to say Happy Pride Month. For those of you who may not know, I identify as bisexual or pansexual or queer. I identify with those words. I identify as a member of the queer community or the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. 2S stands for two-spirited, which is an indigenous term. The Q stands for queer and questioning. The I stands for intersex. And the A is for asexual and allies. And there are many other letters that are, you know, many other things, many other identities that people may have for their sexual identity or their romantic identity, and none of those are even touching on gender identity. So for me, justice is an important part of my path, social justice, and all forms of justice, really. I oppose all forms of oppression, and I am learning about all of these things. I am not an expert in any of these things, and that is why I refer you to many other resources that can help. I do believe in trying to do our role as white people, talking to each other about these issues, so that that emotional labor is not all on people of color who are already affected by these things day in and day out. Some of the work has to be on us. So there are resources online that we can find. You know, Google is available to look things up that we don't know. We don't have to ask people. There's probably already an article or something about it. People on YouTube are talking about these things as well. So yeah, those are some resources that I have to share. I'm also part of the reclaiming community, the reclaiming tradition of witchcraft, which was created and grew up as a specifically social justice and activism-oriented tradition. So I'm learning a lot about it through that as well. And again, it's not something at all that I consider myself highly knowledgeable about yet. These are not issues that I really had any awareness of consciously until I was in college. And, you know, they're not things that I was taught about as a kid. Trying to change that, you know. Getting different perspectives is, well, you know, it's the whole point we started this channel, specifically within the pagan realm of getting different perspectives. But I encourage you all that if you don't currently have a lot of people of color's perspectives, or queer and trans people of color's perspectives, or indigenous people's perspectives in your realm of influence on social media, in real life, you know, whatever, if those are not perspectives that you are already exposed to, look them up on social media, watch the movies, watch documentaries, watch TV shows with representation. You know, they don't all have to be specifically about race. One of the things that I have been liking to do that was on the list of 75 things white people can do for racial justice, which is part of the anti-racism resources document that I will be linking. One of the things on that list of 75 things, number 38, is decolonize your bookshelf. So, and that's a concept that I was introduced to a few years ago, but it's not something that I've like sat down and done until recently. So I'm actually counting, you know, how many authors on my bookshelves are white people versus black people or other people of color. How many are women? How many are LGBTQ+, you know? And it's interesting seeing the different genres on my bookshelf and how in one type of books there is an abundance of a certain type of identity of authors, and in another section, you know, my plays and poetry versus nonfiction books versus fiction books versus text and reference books, kids books, young adult fiction, stuff like that. You know, I'm finding that, for example, there are a lot more female authors in my collection in fiction than there are even in my plays collection, you know, and so the idea is to get rid of anything that is inherently problematic or that was created by known racists or other extremely problematic views, not because we can't be exposed to views that we disagree with, but because certain things don't need to be in our personal collections. More of that specification is in the document, so I don't want to say any more about that because I'm really paraphrasing Allie Henny when I say that. That is who wrote the post that is linked to if you read that 75 Things article and you click on Decolonize Your Bookshelf, the thing that you're looking at is a post by Allie Henny, and Allie explains it more there. But that's something I've been doing, and it's just about, you know, looking at how much we already have other perspectives in our lives, in our area of influence around us, and consciously seeking out diverse voices that will help to give us those perspectives that we haven't been exposed to before or that we don't hear or see a lot of. So go through that document, follow some of those accounts. They have links for all of their different social media, so if you're on Twitter or if you're on Instagram or if you use something else, you can see who is on those platforms and follow them. I haven't even followed them all from that list yet. I'm doing like a few at a time and then looking at their posts and sharing their posts in my stories. Today specifically, and again, like I said, I forgot that I had to do a video today. Today I was just planning on not posting anything myself on any of my social media, nothing with my own words or my own voice. I am only sharing things that come directly from Black creators, content creators, artists, influencers, or other non-Black people of color, especially if I can find any talking about pride, to get that in there as well, the queer and trans people of color representation. So if you follow me on Instagram, there's a bunch of stuff in my stories all the time, but especially this week, I will be sharing a ton of other people's stuff and not really posting anything of my own. That was my plan. But yeah, my partner reminded me that I had to do this video. My phone overheated, but there we go. I think these are extremely important issues. I think that it's extremely important for us to listen to those perspectives that we have not yet been exposed to, like I said, but also remember that we need to be looking for people who are already speaking about these issues and educating and being open about that. So you'll find the organizations and individuals who have the social media where they are actively teaching people about anti-racism, and you know, these are activists, these are artists, these are leaders of organizations, things like that. We can't necessarily go around to any person of color that we find and expect them to teach us. That is another important thing to remember. We need to be seeking out the people who are already providing the resources, not demanding resources and more emotional labor from people who are not already offering it. Not everyone has to do that. We can use the internet to find the resources that are already available for us as white people to make use of, to educate ourselves. So, yeah. Other than that, I am enjoying the nice weather that we've had today. Probably also part of why I didn't remember what day it was. And my partner and I are keeping up with the news, the stuff that's happening in downtown Cleveland, because we live outside of Cleveland. We used to live very close to downtown. We have friends who live downtown who could see the protests happening from their windows, who were able to say, you know, this is what they said on the mainstream news media, and this is what was actually happening. And they're not the same, you know? So, internet media, especially social media, videos, clips, posts, photos from people who are actually there, leaders of activist organizations who are actually organizing these things, those people can give us a more clear view of what's going on. Those are the people we can look to find out what we should be doing, how we can be supporting. And, you know, there is still a pandemic, so not all of us are going and protesting in person because it's very difficult to remain distanced doing that. But one of the other big things that we can do is call legislators, call local government officials, demanding that things change. We can sign petitions. I couldn't tell you how many petitions I've signed in the past few days because online it is so easy. Once you're signed up with an account on like change.org, for example, you can sign petitions after you've already set up your account with one click. You can just go through, read the description, find out what the petition's for, click to sign. It's extremely easy. And so that's a thing you could do. And if you have the money to donate, I know not everyone does right now because pandemic has left a lot of people without their jobs, without extra income, without, you know, whatever. But we do still have our lives. And so if there is any amount that we can give, there are places to donate to, as I mentioned earlier, and that will also be shared on those social media accounts that you'll find, and I think there are even some listed directly in that document that I'm going to share. So yeah, I have now spoken for way too long, so I'm going to go. Thank you very much for watching and or listening. I will see you next time, and until then, don't forget to be awesome. Don't forget that being racist is definitely not awesome. Happy Pride. Blessed be. Fight the system, dismantle oppressive systems, and goodbye.